Welcome to Bay Shore's 5th Annual Community Summit. You will be seeing and receiving a tape this evening prepared by our Multimedia Lab. The 3-part Harmony shows in the first part Bay Shore Schools as a model for the State Department of Education in a tape prepared by them. The second part is anecdotal discussion between our citizens and middle school students, which gives you a wonderful history on Bay Shore. The third part is a birthday video card for Entenmann's on their 100th birthday celebration, also prepared by 2 of our senior students. Thank you for coming tonight. Thank you for your continued support. Enjoy the tape. Enjoy the summit.
We did a short segment on the Bay Shore School District to show some of the things they've accomplished and how key the relationship was. Why don't we take a look at that, and then we'll come back and talk a little bit about how they succeeded.
Bay Shore, it's really a unique community. It's a community that's far different from most other places in that it goes from a community of extreme affluence to, unfortunately, a community of extreme indigence. But if you speak to both sides, the affluent and the indigent, they both love this community. Having to search out or find a superintendent that was sensitive to the needs of all children, not just a specific group of children, was going to be a difficult task. What we chose to do was to identify a community that was similar to Bay Shore, and then look for a specific person that could certainly fit that bill.
Part of the mandate of the board was to get a superintendent that would reach out into the community.
They needed a person who was a leader, who had a track record of pulling up a school district.
So it really began with finding a superintendent that would run our schools in such a way that everybody would be brought together for the common cause, and the common cause being the children.
They wanted someone who could bring peace with the Teachers Association. There had been a history of bad feeling and strife. They wanted someone who could bring the community together, who was actively working with a community, a diverse community, and able to relate and focus. And they wanted someone who could have high academic standards and focus on that.
We were very concerned academically. Our children were not doing well. Very few of them were graduating with Regents diplomas. Few of them were winning scholarships to better schools.
There was a strong possibility that when the state came out with this list of schools in need of improvement, that we would have schools on those lists.
We decided to have a town meeting to really ascertain where the community wanted the school system to be. A school can only be as good as its community, because if it does reflect the community, then if there's crime in the community, there'll be violence in the schools. If the downtown is neglected, very often the schools will be neglected and budgets won't pass. So at the first summit, we had quality of life issues. We had the police and social service and the hospitals and the health agencies, and we had the businessmen come in and talk about economic redevelopment. If you don't have a strong economic system and a strong tax base, you're not going to be able to support a strong public school.
It was Dr. Holman's philosophy that if the schools were going to improve, the community had to improve its image and in reality.
You have the Chamber of Commerce president, you have the Community Forum president, you have all of the organizations that are active in the community working together, and I think she and the board have empowered all of us to enhance our ability to help ourselves.
We were very specific as a board. At the high school, what were we going to work on? We wanted SAT scores to go up. That clear. If you had 16 goals, then you have no goals. So you have to be very specific. What is the goal? What does it mean raising academic standards? Set the target and then judge against that target.
We began with data, hard data on individual students, item analyses where they were weak, so that individual classroom teachers could focus on areas of weakness.
For every student who was at risk, I asked for a diagnosis from the teacher. Last summer, I scheduled every single child in the elementary school and middle school. I set a target for every one of them. The school board had a database, and we had a computer printout. This is what we think this child should do. This is his progress. This is what he's doing. And that got everybody's attention, because they realized that, well, wait a minute, this is where the child is when he comes to me, and this is where I want him to be at the end of the year. So teachers had something very specific, and we tried to support them.
Teachers were provided with very specific information about where kids were weak in reading, in the areas, particularly in the areas of reading and math, and were directed to establish programs to remediate those areas of weakness.
We believe if students cannot read at the third grade level and we don't provide that floor, they're never going to be able to make it in high school. They're never going to be able to get the Regents diploma. So we started very early, concentrating on the primary and the third grade scores, and we're very pleased with that. The same thing was true with the SAT scores at the high school. That was the goal. They were told to improve the SAT scores. They went up 54 points. That's not by chance. That's by hard work.
Most of the parents in the community living in Bayshore and Brightwater want to send their children to Bayshore again.
You've seen a real migration back into the public school systems over the last 5 years.
There's a tremendous amount of hope in this community, and the school system's a real good school system.
So we're very proud of our seniors. They're a wonderful, diverse group. We treasure every one of them.
That is one happy marriage between that school board, that community, and the superintendent. I think they really found the right fit, no question about it. And obviously they've made
As many of you know, the Bayshore School District has always placed a great premium on its recognition of and commitment to civic responsibility. This priority was recently made manifest when Bayshore Middle School students met with longtime Bayshore residents in an effort to discover more about the childhood experiences and treasured memories of those who have grown up, attended school, worked, and/or raised families here in Bayshore. In preparing for such a momentous exchange, more than 80 6th, 7th, and 8th graders studied the history of Bayshore and compiled questions for their 20 or so guests. We would now like to share with you a taste of Bayshore's history, as related to our students by some of our community's most knowledgeable and devoted citizens. Longtime Bayshore citizen Wanda Romansky, formerly Wanda Sharkey, spent many years in our school serving as a substitute teacher. Her husband, James, was the principal of 4th Avenue School and subsequently South Country School. Joan Wyatt, formerly Joan Rogers, grew up in Bayshore and graduated from Bayshore High School. Joan and her husband, Bob, live in a Bayshore house that is more than 100 years old.
Landmarks of Bayshore are mostly on Main Street, which have been taken over now by the mall. South Shore Mall is a landmark in Bayshore. On Main Street there was a hotel called the Cortland House, and it was very well known.
Christine Kelly, born and raised in Bayshore, attended the new Bayshore High School and went on to raise her 3 children in Bayshore. At our oral history event, Ms. Kelly treated the students to some of her own writing. She read a short story about the goodness of Thanksgiving and how she spent the holiday as a young child.
Out to cool. My brother, sister, and I are drooling, hoping that tomorrow, Thanksgiving Day, will hurry up and get here.
Dennis Hopper chairs the Bayshore Brightwater's Summit Council Restoration and Preservation Committee and is an expert on the early growth of the movie industry in our town.
My oldest memory of Bayshore? Well, from the research I did, the things that I had done looking into the past was the silent film industry that came here. And that's where I did most of my research on Bayshore. And we still have a studio today. It was really, the film industry that we had here, which started in the late 1800s. There was a studio in Brooklyn, and then they built one right out here in Bayshore. The studio is still there today, 94 4th Avenue. And that's where they were filming all of the silent films. It's a wonderful place. It's Vitagraph.
The Vitagraph building was not, however, used exclusively as a cinematic venue. Bayshore High School's first basketball team used the building as a gym. The Vitagraph was the only building in town with high ceilings and a large playing surface. Bob Wyatt graduated from Bayshore High School in 1934 and still resides here with his lovely wife, Joan. They have lived in the same house now for 53 years. George Ryder serves as the chairperson of Bayshore Summit Council Redevelopment Committee. Born at Dr. King's Hospital, an institution founded by his grandfather, George grew up in Bayshore and was educated in its schools.
My granddad was a man by the name of Dr. King, and he had a hospital on Maple Avenue. As you go down, it's the big building on Maple Avenue. You go towards the bay, so it's no longer a hospital. But I remember that every time I drive by it, I think of him.
Priscilla Hancock was a teacher at Gardner Manor School for many years and is known for her excellent lessons on Bayshore's history. As vice president of the Historical Society, Ms. Hancock brought a wide variety of artifacts and anecdotes to our oral history project at Bayshore Middle School. It has been said that the key to unlocking the future lies in understanding, embracing, and safeguarding the past. These long-time Bayshore residents have thus ensured their treasured memories by sharing them with our youth. To all those who enriched our students and our community at large with their time, knowledge, and generosity, we salute you and thank you.
What starts with the letter C? Cookie starts with C. Let's think of other things that starts with C.
Happy birthday, Entenmann's. We're here to say happy birthday, 100th birthday to the Entenmann's who have done so much for Bayshore.
Bayshore has always been a community that you are delighted to raise your children in.
We appreciate everything they've meant to Bayshore and everything they've given to our community.
Come and see their sweet success.
They have always called Bayshore home, from their first little bake shop on Main Street to their great factory on 5th Avenue.
Happy birthday to Entenmann's, a jewel in the rough.
Celebrating Entenmann's 100th birthday.
Happy birthday, Entenmann's. It's your 100th and many, many more.
The Entenmann's have been wonderful to the school district of Bayshore.
Thank you, Entenmann's, for everything you've done for our community. Thanks a lot to the Entenmann's who've always remained part of this great community.
One of the best things that could have happened to Bayshore is Entenmann's.
It's a lovely day here in Bayshore.
We're here to celebrate the
Entenmann's birthday party.
A real great day for Bayshore.
We're helping Entenmann celebrate their 100th birthday. I remember when my family moved to Bayshore, Entenmann's was a little mom and pop shop right down on the corner of 2nd Avenue and Main Street.
As the Entenmann family has always played a major part in the community.
Big celebration.
We look upon this event as an opportunity to revitalize that spirit within our community.
Almost every good thing that's happened in Bayshore, the Entenmanns have been involved with, and this community owes a debt of gratitude to the Entenmann family.
Students, keep up the good work in school and eat lots of Entenmann's.
C is for cookie, that's good enough for me. C is for cookie, that's good enough for me. Oh, cookie, cookie, cookie starts with C. Yeah! Cookie, cookie, cookie starts with C. Oh boy! Cookie, cookie, cookie starts with C.
Welcome to this edition of Legislators Report. My name is Angie Carpenter, and I'm pleased to welcome you and really pleased to have as our guest for you Dr. Evelyn Holman, who is the Superintendent of Schools from the Bayshore School District. Welcome, Dr. Holman.
Well, thank you, Angie. Good to be here.
Thank you. Well, we've got lots of things to share with our viewers, and the thing I really want to start with is the summit that we have that I think has become legendary now in Suffolk County, and this will be the 5th annual Bayshore Summit. So share with us a little bit about the summit and what it's all about.
Well, it'll be February 5th at 7 o'clock in the high school auditorium. And we are thrilled that it is the 5th year for our community summit. We've gotten national attention. In fact, we have some people flying in from Georgia to be with us that evening.
Oh, I didn't know about that. That's neat.
So Barbara Fishkin, our person who is in charge of the summit, who is home with the flu right now, is just thrilled, and we have several other school districts from New York who want to come. The summit was established 5 years ago basically to bring the community together. When the Bayshore Board of Education was looking for a new superintendent, and happily I was selected, they wanted to bring the community together. And I think they realize, as the community does, that the schools are going to be no better than the community. They reflect what's going on in the community. So we brought people together in a sort of old-fashioned town meeting to really discuss where we were with Bayshore and where we wanted to go, what our future was going to be. And we would have been happy with just a few people to show up to discuss. And so when we had over 1,000 at our first summit, we were thrilled. Luckily, Bob Gaffney had agreed to be our speaker, and we had a standing room only crowd, and we discussed many, many issues about what our hopes were for Bayshore.
What's interesting, I think, thinking back to that first summit, what our hopes were for Bayshore, and here we're coming to the 5th summit, and you know, there are times that people say things just don't happen quick enough. But when you think back to that first summit, when we looked at the problems that were facing the community, and now, you know, in another week we'll be standing up there sharing all of the successes, it really is amazing.
It is. It's exciting. It's exciting to drive through downtown Bayshore and see our new band shell and all the wonderful decorations for the holidays and what the beautification committee has done. It is very exciting, and I think that it is a testimony to all the people in Bayshore, and certainly to our political leaders, and the Bayshore Task Force that Bob Gaffney created and you chair has certainly been instrumental. It's an exciting thing to see a community pull together to support all the endeavors of the various businesses, the schools, and it's paid off in the time and effort.
Well, you know, your efforts, you know, you said it well. The school really is the focal point. It's the one place where the community, you know, touches at some point or other. And I think your efforts there in Bayshore have been like a recipe for getting a community together, empowering a community, and getting them to speak, you know, together, to speak to one another. And I know we use the term so many times, speak with one voice, because so many times those that are in a position of authority, like yourself as a superintendent of schools and myself as a government official, you know, you would be talking to one group and they would say, well, we want this, and then you talk to another group and they're saying, oh, no, we really would like this.
Yes.
So just bringing everyone together, the chamber and you know, Donna Perricone, the president of the chamber, and the BID, and all of the various entities, all of the civics, the volume of people that sit around your boardroom, and you're so gracious, she even has coffee for everyone.
Not donuts, but
not
coffee.
Donuts, but coffee. It really is that recipe for success.
I think so. I think it is like the old-fashioned town meeting, and as a history major, I believe in that democratic spirit. I believe that there's nothing that we can't tackle if we work together. And I think what came out of that first summit was that the community said to us, let's continue to have a group meet together and to address the problems and to ensure our future. And that's what happened. Out of that came a regular summit council. We have about 30 people who meet once a month as part of the executive board, board of 9, and then the 30 summit council members. And they just discuss the issues and act as a forum. Also, we have 10 committees that grew out of the identification of issues from that first summit, such as beautification and redevelopment and code enforcement. So, and 2 new committees recently, historical preservation, that have been just phenomenal, with people coming together and meeting once a month and addressing specific issues. So it really became a very informal organization where the entire community was welcome to come and just think with us and have a cup of coffee and discuss the issues of where we want to be.
But I think, too, it provides a vehicle for people, because for the most part, people are willing to help out. They will volunteer, but they need a little bit of encouragement, a little bit of direction, and an opportunity to do it. And with the 10 committees and subcommittees and everything else, there's always something, whatever the person's interest is, whether it's beautification, and they go and they help with the planters and really get in there and plant bulbs and shrubs and decorate for the holidays, or it's cultural arts, or concerns about quality of life or code enforcement, or whatever the issue, there is a vehicle for them to be a part of the process of coming up with a solution.
It's really exciting to see that it works, a community working together to support each other. Our new youth services group just came out with a booklet for professionals within the community that lists all the services available to young people. Well, that's such a benefit to all of us, especially the school system. So we see concomitant results, and we have felt the support certainly within the school system. I couldn't ask for a community that gave more support. And as you say, I can just pick up the phone and ask for something, and it's there. Just as an example, at the Summit Council meeting on the 5th, every person who comes, every family who comes to the summit will get a copy of this booklet. Right. DVC has provided this for us. EAB does the printing. Right. Everybody in the community has pulled together to make sure that it's an exciting and useful event. So this is a book that really serves as a handbook for all the different civic groups, and we will have 25 restaurants, 25 to 30 restaurants who will be providing us with food. The school will provide entertainment. And as you go through town, you can see all the various businesses who have put up our little signs that, our little posters that talk
and it says
about...
it so well, treasure the past, unlock the future.
Absolutely, absolutely. And our new preservation committee had a wonderful, wonderful interaction with our middle school students where many of the senior citizens, not all of them senior, I hesitate to call them senior, but they came and they answered questions for our middle school students on what it was like in Bayshore in the past. So we have the videotapes that we will actually give to all the people who attend the summit. We will give them a videotape of our senior citizens talking with our middle school students about their childhood.
And so, you know, it provides a forum, too, for learning for the students, communication. I mean, there's just so many wonderful positive outgrowths of this whole exercise.
Absolutely.
And, you know, it started out really just talking about the problems and concerns and what can be done about it. And it has grown into, I would say, an expo.
Yes,
because you just mentioned 25 food restaurants, or I know ShopRite from Bayshore. They've come down with a spread of food.
Yes, everyone.
You know, people can really have dinner there.
Yes, don't eat before you come.
First. But there's all of this, and it also provides a forum for the various community organizations to get their literature out, to get news out about what's happening. I know just earlier today I met with representatives of the Women's Place, which is over at the Y, yes. And they're having a big women's expo on March 25th, and they're so excited because they're going to have a table, you know, at the summit. And where can you have 1,000 people or more come walking by and give you the opportunity to talk about, you know, what is so special and important to you?
Well, we're excited to have them. There will be 700 tables or 700 booths.
Is that amazing?
And they're all nonprofit because the businesses come in and support us, but the nonprofit groups have a chance to answer questions, and the Lions, the Rotary, the schools, Toro.
Right.
And
Toro
we're so
School
excited
of
to
Health
have them.
Sciences
That's right.
Opening up this month. That's great. Yeah.
So it really is an exciting community event, and it's fun, it's informative, and we're just so pleased as the Board of Education to be able to host it.
Well, we're very lucky because the board is very, very progressive and open-minded, yes. and gives you that support, and that's important. And we don't have an awful lot of time, but I do want to give you an opportunity to kind of toot your horn a little bit about the district. It really has done some wonderful things.
Well, Bayshore students are just fabulous students, and we have a great staff. I would say that we've gotten national attention on this particular summit and received the National School Board's Magna Award. So we're very pleased and proud of that. In fact, we'll have people flying in from Georgia and other school systems to come to the summit. But basically, the school has gotten a great deal of support from this as well. I mean, the more you give, the more you receive.
Exactly.
And certainly the passing of an $18 million bond referendum, the support of our budgets, the interaction of our community with our schools and our students.
Well, people get to see firsthand really what the schools are all about, and there's been such a change in education with technology that's taken place over the years. And if people, especially those whose children may have already gone through the school system, they're getting an opportunity to see firsthand what is happening in education now, and it helps them perhaps be a little bit more supportive than they might have otherwise.
I think you hit the nail on the head with that, Angie, because I think they see the results of their tax dollar and know that they're getting good value for their money. And just the test scores going up, the SAT scores that we were told by the public at our first summit that they were concerned about those test scores. And working with the staff has been wonderful, and the teachers have been wonderful. And our test scores in the last 5 years have gone up. Our SAT scores 200 points, well above the state national average, and 100 points in just the last 2 years. So that, I think, shows you very visible results in terms of our student product.
So the vehicle really, in addition to being there for the community, really proved well for the schools because, like you said, they were concerned about test scores. You heard the concerns of the community. You came back and certainly have done so much, to better that.
Well, as you said, if you have a strong, supportive Board of Education willing to work with the administration and teachers and community, there's nothing that can't be done.
And guess what? We're out of time. So before we leave, I want to say one more time, the date is Thursday, February 4th.
5th.
4th?
Is it 4th or 5th? Oh, dear.
You are right. It is the 5th. I apologize.
Okay. That's all right. Thursday, February 4th at 7 o'clock.
Okay, it is the 4th at 7 o'clock. We will see you there. Do come. Whether you live in Bayshore or not, it's a learning experience. And thank you for being here.
Thank you, Angie, and thank you for all your wonderful support.
My pleasure. That was fast, I think.
Hello, I'm Robert Hendricks, and this is New York Learns. Today our discussion will be about superintendents and school boards and the relationship between both of them, how important that relationship is to a school district. Many say as the superintendent and school board relationship goes, so goes a school district. Today we'll be exploring that and seeing how true that is, exploring the reasons why superintendents and school boards get along, why they work, why the relationships can work together. And we'll be having 3 of our guests today. We'll be talking about this very issue. Our first, of course, is Commissioner Richard Mills, State Education Commissioner, who is the CEO of the State Education Department and also deals with the board, and a chairman of the board in Carl Hayden, the Chancellor. Our second guest today is Candy Swenson, who is the superintendent of Longwood Central School District, where there has been a lot of contention on the board before you came in, but you've been able to turn that around. And Paul Puccio, who is a board member and board president at the Schodack School District, which is in Rensselaer County, where you have spent 18 years as a board president. Candy, I'll start with you. You were at one of the forums that the commissioner held on leadership, and one of the things that was brought out was how difficult a time many superintendents are having in dealing with their school boards, their boards of education, how difficult that relationship is. Why is that? And how did you turn it around in Longwood?
One of the reasons it's difficult is because the school board is a group of individuals. And like all groups of individuals, they bring different perspectives, different knowledge base, different skills to the table. What makes it work for us in Longwood and what makes it work in many districts is the recognition that everybody has something to contribute, that our roles are important, and that they need to be defined, that we need to share common goals and understand that only by working together are we really going to be able to accomplish the mission of educating the children of the community.
How are you able, though, to make that turnaround in the community in a place that really didn't respect the role of the superintendent at one time?
Through communication. We found a need and the time to sit together, to talk, to identify what had gone wrong, and to make a commitment to each other to address those areas and make a difference for the community.
Commissioner, you deal with the Chancellor, and you have a very successful relationship with him and the Board of Regents. How important is that to the success of your job?
Well, without that relationship, there wouldn't be a job. There wouldn't be the results that we're working towards. I think that the relationship that we have, that I have with the board and with the Chancellor, is a strategic advantage. We work very, very hard to make sure that we pursue our different roles in a consistent way. And the Commissioner has great power under the law. The board has great power under the law. They've got to be using that power in a consistent manner. And we really train together. We really study that. We are a team, and we hope that it shows.
Paul, in 18 years as a school board member, 9 years as a school board president, how important is the success of your relationship and the board's relationship with the superintendent?
I think it's absolutely vital. You do not get good schools unless you have a working partnership between the board and the superintendent of schools. I think that arises out of something that Commissioner Mills said, and that is the distinction between roles. Very clearly, the board is the governance body. The CEO, the superintendent, is the administrative entity, and you must clearly understand the distinction between those two things and make them work together. The other thing I found is that it pays to have rules of the game, if you will, so that we have very much formalized in our school district such things as communication protocols, so that school board members know how to communicate with each other, how to communicate with the superintendent, how to communicate with members of the administration and faculty, and there are rules of the game. The other thing that we've done, and again, it is consistent with what Commissioner Mills said in terms of working at it, you have to really inculcate this into the processes that are in place. School board president must manage the process of the board. The superintendent must manage the process of administration. And then you have to take the time to reflect on these things. So we've built this into our formal superintendent's evaluation process and into the board self-evaluation process to revisit the rules of the game, to look at our behavior and our conduct, and to see how well we've done process-wise. And that, I think, has made a big difference because it allows us to focus not just on our roles, but how well we're fulfilling those roles, independent of the progress of the district. So we manage our relationship, we manage the work that we do in a very formalized way.
We had a brief interview with Chancellor Carl Hayden about the role of superintendents and school boards and how important it is to coalesce as a school board behind a superintendent. Let's see what Mr. Hayden had to say.
Chancellor, you were a school board member before you were a regent. What, in your opinion, are the very difficult jobs facing a school board in trying to maintain an educational agenda while at the same time getting public support?
If you're going to be effective as a school board member, you have to be disciplined. And the discipline is what will permit you to take 1,000 competing voices and distill what you're hearing and what you're reading into a very short list of concerted actions. That's really the hardest thing to do, the triage part of this, paring the list down so that you can find a group of things that are crucial to improving the performance of the kids and that are achievable if everybody will agree that that's what you're going to do, but it's a very daunting task.
What kind of leadership qualities does it take to be a school board member and then again a superintendent?
I think the easiest way to think about it is it ought to be the job of the board to establish what the ends are. That gets expressed in policy. It ought to be the job of the superintendent to make the strategic decisions about the means by which those ends are accomplished. And with that being the dividing line, they ought to get out of each other's way, except that in their interface with the public, they should always be seen to be together when that's possible. Now, there are going to be times when it simply won't work out that way, but
when there are differences, sharp differences on the part of the school board and the superintendent, what would your advice be, and how best do they begin to resolve those conflicts?
My advice would be that they talk about it. I mean, I think a lot of it is bound up in communications. People who talk together well, frankly, and effectively, privately, tend to be less likely to have confrontations publicly.
You and the regents and the commissioner went on a retreat. Do you think all school boards should do that? And what can be learned from getting away from the day-to-day business?
It's very easy for human beings to talk about the behavior of others, but it's not so easy to talk about your own behavior. And that's why I think a retreat is invaluable, because you get to see your behavior analyzed through the eyes of your partner, who is a partner united with you in quest of something terribly important. But if you don't honor your respective roles, you're going to end up frustrating what each of you wants to accomplish. If you are going to make a quantum improvement in what you're doing, the key to that, the necessary precondition for that, is a very close, harmonious, natural working relationship.
That was Carl Hayden, the Chancellor of the Board of Regents. Commissioner, obviously you have a very good and successful working relationship with the Chancellor and the Board of Regents. He used intimate terms like through the eyes of your partner, almost as if it were a marriage. And the natural working relationship that you have together. These terms show that, I guess, that you're close. Why did he use those types of terms, and how close is your relationship with Carl, the Board of Regents, on a daily basis?
It's genuinely close. I think it helps that we really like one another. The values match. Both, all of us, I think, on the board, and certainly I, work very hard, and everybody knows that. We care desperately about the results. We want the children to grow up to be competent, caring, productive adults and citizens. And we talk a lot. We listen a lot. The Chancellor mentioned the board retreat that we had. It was on this one subject. We spent the whole retreat on CEO-board relationships. We wanted to make a strong relationship even stronger because we think we can get more done that way.
You know, you said we like each other. And as funny as that sounds, that's a very basic element of a relationship. Yet, I can tell you that that is not what you see around the state most of the time, because these are really unnatural alliances in many ways. I mean, a superintendent doesn't get to choose his or her board members. A board member sometimes doesn't get to choose the superintendent. How do you deal with that issue of, you know, being on the same page personally, as you seem to be with Chancellor Hayes?
Well, you know, the board interviewed me, and they were very careful about the interview, but I very consciously interviewed them, and they could see that I was doing that. We wanted to make sure that there was a good fit, and as the board has changed over the years, we tried to carry that relationship forward, and we all worked very hard at it.
Paul, you know, the Chancellor echoed some of the things you said in our opening about understanding roles, working on that, and he said you need to understand your roles and get out of the way of each other. Does that ring true in your experience?
It does, very much. It's not just understanding the roles, but also taking the complementary roles and putting them together in a way that, in fact, you end up with productive results. You must have something that binds you together, and I believe that the core of that is kids. Schools must be child-centered, and we must be focused on academic performance. Now, having said that, what do you then do together that reflects the differences of the board versus the superintendent, but at the same point in time makes you work together towards a common end? And I'll just give you one example. We put together a school community task force on assessment. If we were going to progress from the Regents Action Plan through the Compact of Learning to the new standards, we had to know that we could measure our results. The question arose is, how would we measure? Well, measurement is something that is professionally driven in terms of what it is that you have to do for a curriculum perspective, but at the same point in time, the board has to translate that measurement into something it can describe to the community, so it can demonstrate the success of the school district. We needed together to learn about assessment of curriculum and be able to translate that. What that led to was an understanding of what the superintendent and the faculty would do and what it is that the board would do, but together we ended up taking the whole issue and moving it forward so that, in fact, we could complement each other, carry out our successful different roles, but at the same point in time make sure that it fit and we were in partnership around kids and performance.
Candy, that also marks your experience along with a lot of that collaboration. But many superintendents say, you know, the board that hired me is not the board that's there now. In fact, that may change in a year. In fact, with you, it did. It changed several times over. How do you deal with change? The fact that the same board is not the same that might renew your contract or buy into your vision 2 years later. How do you deal with that?
We've established an orientation process, and it's something that the entire board participates in, along with me and the key administrative staff in the district. From the time the new school board member is elected, we invite the board member to sit at the table. Even though that board member may not actively participate until they're sworn in at reorganization, they're invited in, they're given materials. We bring the board members to our schools and we show off what we're doing in the district. We have them spend time meeting with key administrative staff at the assistant superintendent and principals level. And we give them information. We help them to have the tools, the information, and as much of the background as we can possibly provide, so that when they sit at the table and face those crucial and difficult decisions, they are armed with what they need. And they don't feel left out of it. They don't feel as if they're not part of the team. Right. We also try to humanize the process. Every year we have an annual dinner, and at that dinner, it's purely a social event. We welcome new board members and we say farewell to those who are leaving, and we celebrate what we've done in the past year. And then we too have a retreat, and we spend several days reflecting on what we've done in the past year and setting goals and new strategies for the coming year.
I know that that has had an effect on your district. I've seen that. And I also know that a district that we recently visited, it has also had an effect, that relationship, and that's the Bayshore School District on Long Island as well, where a superintendent came in 5 years ago and really made a difference. School board went out, looked for a superintendent that would match its community, and they found the person. We did a short segment on the Bayshore School District to show some of the things they've accomplished and how key the relationship was. Why don't we take a look at that, and then we'll come back and talk a little bit about how they succeeded.
Bayshore, it's really a unique community. It's a community that's far different from most other places in that it goes from a community of extreme affluence to, unfortunately, a community of extreme indigence. But if you speak to both sides, the affluent and the indigent, they both love this community. Having to search out or find a superintendent that was sensitive to the needs of all children, not just a specific group of children, was going to be a difficult task. What we chose to do was to identify a community that was similar to Bayshore, and then look for a specific person that could certainly fit that bill.
Part of the mandate of the board was to get a superintendent that would reach out into the community.
They needed a person who was a leader, who had a track record of pulling up a school district.
So it really began with finding a superintendent that would run our schools in such a way that everybody would be brought together for the common cause, and the common cause being the children.
They wanted someone who could bring peace with the Teachers Association. There had been a history of bad feeling and strife. They wanted someone who could bring the community together, who was actively working with a community, a diverse community, and able to relate and focus. And they wanted someone who could have high academic standards and focus on that.
We were very concerned academically. Our children were not doing well. Very few of them were graduating with Regents diplomas. Few of them were winning scholarships to better schools.
There was a strong possibility that when the state came out with this list of schools in need of improvement, that we would have schools on those lists.
We decided to have a town meeting to really ascertain where the community wanted the school system to be. A school can only be as good as its community, because if it does reflect the community, then if there's crime in the community, there'll be violence in the schools. If the downtown is neglected, very often the schools will be neglected and budgets won't pass. So at the first summit, we had quality of life issues. We had the police and social service and the hospitals and the health agencies, and we had the businessmen come in and talk about economic redevelopment. If you don't have a strong economic system and a strong tax base, you're not going to be able to support a strong public school.
It was Dr. Holman's philosophy that if the schools were going to improve, the community had to improve its image and in reality.
You have the Chamber of Commerce president, you have the Community Forum president, you have all of the organizations that are active in the community working together, and I think she and the board have empowered all of us to enhance our ability to help ourselves.
We were very specific as a board. At the high school, what were we going to work on? We wanted SAT scores to go up. That clear. If you had 16 goals, then you have no goals. So you have to be very specific. What is the goal? What does it mean raising academic standards? Set the target and then judge against that target.
We began with data, hard data on individual students, item analyses, where they were weak, so that individual classroom teachers could focus on areas of weakness.
For every student who was at risk, I asked for a diagnosis from the teacher. Last summer, I scheduled every single child in the elementary school and middle school. I set a target for every one of them. The school board had a database, and we had a computer printout. This is what we think this child should do. This is his progress. This is what he's doing. And that got everybody's attention, because they realized that, well, wait a minute, this is where the child is when he comes to me, and this is where I want him to be at the end of the year. So teachers had something very specific. And we tried to support them.
teachers were provided with very specific information about where kids were weak in reading, in the areas, particularly in the areas of reading and math, and were directed to establish programs to remediate those areas of weakness.
We believe if students cannot read at the 3rd grade level and we don't provide that floor, they're never going to be able to make it in high school. They're never going to be able to get the Regents diploma. So we started very early concentrating on the primary and the 3rd grade scores, and we're very pleased with that. The same thing was true with the SAT scores at the high school. That was the goal. They were told to improve the SAT scores. They went up 54 points. That's not by chance. That's by hard work.
Most of the parents in the community living in Bayshore and Brightwaters want to send their children to Bayshore again.
You've seen a real migration back into the public school systems over the last 5 years.
There's a tremendous amount of hope in this community, and the school system, a real good school system.
So we're very proud of our seniors. They're a wonderful, diverse group. We treasure every one of them.
That is one happy marriage between that school board, that community, and the superintendent. I think they really found the right fit, no question about it. And obviously they've made some kind of difference. I was interested, though, in one of the things that one of the community members said, and maybe you picked it up, Commissioner. The school board and superintendent empowered us to enhance our ability to help ourselves. It sounds like a textbook definition. How can other school boards and superintendents do the same thing?
I think superintendents and boards have great authority, great moral authority. They can set the tone. They can set the public agenda by asking the right questions, by including people, and by obviously listening to people. Town meetings, summits, these are things that work. When you bring in law enforcement, when you bring in the human services, the parents, religious community, when you bring in all the people in the community, and you listen, you find that they're often talking about a slice of a problem that you see. Mm-hmm. And I've seen this. It's a powerful force, and school boards, superintendents often can show the very, very best of the community. I remember when the Regents and I visited Ogdensburg. They held their superintendent in such affection. The board was so deeply engaged, and there were hundreds of people there. It was a wonderful way to see a community. The school leaders made that happen.
Mm. Candy, that idea that was touched upon by Commissioner and by Evelyn Holman over in Bayshore about a town meeting, a summit, they call it in Bayshore. You've done similar things. Why has that been important for you in coalescing your very diverse community?
5 years ago, we recognized that the only opportunity people really had to address the board and the superintendent was a brief period at the start of school board meeting. And too often people had the feeling, the very real feeling, that it wasn't terribly welcome and that we had great important business to conduct and that their presence was really not the primary reason we were there.
It's kind of the worst place to get public input, isn't it?
Absolutely. So we decided to send a different signal, and we created a school community forum that we held on an annual basis and sometimes twice a year, solely for the purpose of gathering public input on important topics. Sometimes it would be on facilities issues, sometimes it would be on other issues that were crucial to the district. And we invited people to register, to speak, and to come in, and our sole purpose there was to get input from the community. It sent a different and a powerful signal, and people have responded accordingly. It's been very important to us.
In a community like yours, Candy, and in Evelyn's community over in Bayshore, the superintendent is held in high esteem. Unfortunately, that's not the case in many communities. How can a superintendent not only do a good job, this to all of you, but also increase the stature of his or her position?
If I can, I think it's about leadership and about respect. The superintendent has to be the educational leader, and the board that recruits a superintendent has to look for the leadership qualities that can let that person excel within the context of the community. The other part of it is that the board has to then maintain its respect for that leadership. And if that partnership is there, the leadership and the respect from the board, then in fact I think you can empower the superintendent to make a real difference in terms of helping to lead a school forward.
Commissioner, you've identified this as an issue. Your superintendents have identified this as an issue. What are you going to do in the next year to help this relationship, help these relationships statewide?
Well, the Regents and I will devote at least the next year to talking about this. We're not going to make policy on leadership until we have a profound understanding of the problem. I've spent many, many hours listening to superintendents. I'm going to do the same thing with school board members. There are going to be 10 forums in the fall. We've done our homework together to get ready for that. Everyone is going to be invited, and we're really going to listen to one another.
What do you hope to come out of it?
I hope that we'll have stronger relationships between superintendents and boards, productive relationships that lead to good results for children. And frankly, I hope part of this will actually recruit people to public service, recruit people to positions of educational leadership. There is no finer calling, and we've got to sound that need very, very clearly.
And I know you believe that. Well, thank you. This has been a great discussion between three people who know what they're talking about. Commissioner Mills, State Education Department Commissioner, Candy Swenson, who's from the Longwood School District Superintendent there on Long Island, and Paul Puccio, who's the board president at the Schodack School District in Rensselaer County. Thank you very much for being with us, and thank you for tuning in to New York Learns. We'll see you next time.